Righty-ho. The problem with everything in Britain is, well, basically, nobody respects anybody else. It's quite shocking. I did my first legal case 20 years ago, nearly. This summer, I've shared the following, because this is context before I write some stories up, which are all ideally just fables. Yeah, I had a conversation. I've shared the following with quite a lot of walkers. Walkers are down to earth people. Walkers don't jump down your neck the first time, as soon as you say something, which I'm sorry, almost everybody does here. Teachers, social worker kind of people, etc. I've explained the following, and of course we all hate the word expert, but I'm an expert at the following merely because off and on over 20 years I've done it, which is parents, very ordinary people with sometimes really kind of perverse little someone in authority, school teacher, doctor, whatever, and these are all well known as how these can go. Look at Panorama 2 years ago, or is it 2.5 years ago? I think it's two. Yes, God, it's 2.5 years ago. The most boring phrase in the world is family justice. But on family justice, right, to the point, quickly. Yeah, because the conversation, or rather sharing a endless, regular insight with the walkers, who are mainly school teachers, that kind of person, even social workers. Hey, guess what? I've noticed something over the last, particularly 10 years. So as of 20 years ago, because my name ended up on a very good website about these social justice things, you can look up the term Mackenzie friend. So I began to be a Mackenzie friend. For about the first 10 years, people would phone me, 8 or 9 years, people, it was about 2/3 mothers to fathers, they'd phone with like terrible stories of, and let's just simplify it by saying there can often be a psychiatric report that is absolute fantasy against them, but that's actually quite unusual. Yeah, but terrible tales. Look at the Websters from 2006 with these kinds of tales. Webster case 2006, the first real injustice that was allowed to be revealed because of my change. Then, right, so they'd phone me up, and guess what? They'd always tell the truth. Always. Sometimes there was bad stuff. Sometimes they had sort of slightly caused fairly, not bad stuff, just they'd had a bit of a wonky phase of a little bit too much to drink or something. People would always tell the truth. Then as of about 10 years ago, and I got really good by then, because I'd have to listen on the phone first and then meet. You always have to meet. It's like they tell a story and I'd have to listen, because I wouldn't want to be helping anybody who definitely was misusing alcohol, drugs, or had ever done any real violence. No, any violence, actually. But as of about 10 years ago, I could no longer tell who's telling the truth. And that, 2 years ago, a man who was a friend of mine for years, him and his partner, had a child sort of removed and put with an enemy of theirs, an 8-year-old. Initially, I was like, oh God, yeah, this is terrible. Huggy, 2-hour session. And then I realised after 3 or 4 days, because of his behaviour, we'd always been such great friends, I realised that I can't tell, actually, is he telling the truth? A lot of people, and they may not even know they're doing it. That's the important thing. I have compassion. In fact, I think probably they don't know they're doing it. But and the internet has enhanced this. But it is a kind of a personality disorder. It's like they've turned their issues into huge, great big they've developed him into a kind of fantasy, partial, not really conspiracy, but that whole kind of, they have this great, huge, it's a polemic that's partly political, partly about the injustice, which is often true. If it's just a case of the injustice, maybe any situation with children needs 5 or 10 hours of good, thoughtful, professional person sitting there and working it out and supporting them. That never happens, even though the law says it's meant to. So that is an injustice. But they have these huge worlds, some which is quite clearly slightly imaginary. Anyway, I realised by 6 or 7 years ago, you just can't tell. And they always would tell the truth, every bit of it. Sometimes I'd be spending 20, 30 hours with people because my role was, apart from being Mackenzie, going to court, sitting them as litigant friend, but I usually did the case. The judges always let me do the case. But working out the strategy, because that's the huge, great big thing, the strategy, and all lawyers are well known as awful, and writing their stories, which is their statements of what's happened, but including the good things that have happened. They could never do that. Good thing, hey, we are above average in terms of we've had a fight, but we made up, and we managed to have 3 good dinners with our kids despite being separated. That's a really good thing, because most people can't manage that anymore in Britain. Anyway, that's the context. That's why you leave Britain. This isn't some kind of one-off. This is like turned into, it is the norm. Oh, I'm sure some I encounter still tell the truth, but I kind of gradually gave it up. Although I started 3 or 4 sort of cases in 2020, 2021, knowing that nobody would be able to get any help doing anything. Now, they almost all give up because, it's really sad. But forget that. But I'm an expert. I know. And I'm always on their side because there will always have been some injustice. Unquestionably. Always. So many normal people are just in this. It's almost like they have this sort of slight fantasy universe that's a hall of cracked mirrors reflecting them in a fractured way back at themselves. They live with their scenarios, their situations, their issues alone for years. So many are in this paradigm. And it's the important thing. They don't have friends or family. They'll sit them down and sort it out. Because that's the first thing. Hey, let's get the story accurate first. Without the story being accurate, we can't then go and get appropriate expert help who'll be on your side. Anyway, there you go. All that matters is I'm so organised, it's ridiculous. A few things to dry, and now I've got to get to, that's my power bank. Almost useless computer, but it's charging a bit. Right. Now, the Ulysses did finish his bed thing is real. Freedom. The end. A few days ago. Off we go into something else, which is writing up a load of good stories from the past. Bizarrely, it is like on the... Why did that man? I liked them. The 2 of them. 3 or 4 weeks ago. Why did he give me that? Anyway, the end.